Үндэсний төвийн хөтөлбөр англи хэл дээр хүрдэг мэдээлэлээр үргэлжлэх болно.
Good evening and welcome to the English News Program. NTV wants to help you understand the major news events of the past week by providing them in English. My name is Danny Wolf. Mongolia and the mining giant Rio Tinto and Ivanhoe have reached an agreement on the stakeholding of the Oyu Tolgoi project in the resource-rich country. In a joint statement released on Wednesday, they said all parties have reaffirmed their continued support for the investment agreement and its implementation. The Mongolian government has sought to increase its stake in the mine to 50% from 34% as previously agreed, while the mining company said the government should honor its original agreement signed in 2009. When completed, the project is expected to be one of the biggest copper mines in the world. According to the initial agreement, the Mongolian government could renegotiate its stake after a period of 30 years. Some parliament members delivered a note about the Oyu Tolgoi investment agreement to Prime Minister S. Batbold on September 7th. They said the agreement must be changed and demanded that the government's share be increased. A published report says the Ivanhoe Mines and Rio Tinto Group have rejected the Mongolian government's request to renegotiate the Oyu Tolgoi investment agreement. International news sites also reported that companies were warning Mongolia that renegotiating the 2-year-old agreement would undermine investor confidence in the country. However, authorities wanted to bring forward the negotiation period, a move that did not go down well with the miners as well as industry analysts. Shares of Ivanhoe rose 18% on the Toronto Stock Exchange as confidence rose that the agreement would remain the same. The Standing Committee on the State Structure discussed a draft law on the parliamentary election on Wednesday. However, neither party has agreed on the ratios of parliament members. The Mongolian People's Party proposed yet another version of the draft election law. On September 30th, the party proposed two possible versions. In one, 52 parliament members would be chosen under the majority system and 24 under the proportional system. In the other, the ratio would be 50 to 26. In its latest version, the MPP is proposing a 48-28 version. But the Democratic Party says it has not yet officially received any of the MPP's draft election law proposals. The Democratic Party's committee has suggested a ratio of 38 to 38. It says it will discuss the MPP's proposals. The two parties must reach an agreement on a draft election law during the autumn session. A meeting of the socialist and socialist-leaning organizations known as the Social Intern of Asia and the Pacific began in Ulaanbaatar for the second time on Friday. Delegates attended to share experiences and discuss how to strengthen cooperation. The Socialist International is a worldwide organization of democratic socialists, social democrats, and labor political parties which formed in 1951. This year's meeting was initiated by the Mongolian People's Party, which is chaired by S. Bayer, a member of parliament and the leading council of the MPP. The meeting was attended by representatives from parties of some 20 countries. Social Intern Secretary General Luis Ayala opened the meeting with a speech. He noted that the MPP is an active member of the Socialist Intern, and members of the organization appreciate the MPP's efforts to strengthen and develop social democracy in Mongolia. Prime Minister S. Batbold, the head of MPP, took part in the meeting and noted that many things have changed in Mongolia in the past 2 decades. He also noted that the MPP has governed for 16 of 20 years since the first democratic elections in Mongolia, and that the party has enjoyed strong support for the past 2 decades. The meeting continued through Saturday. The Mongolian government plans to increase salaries and pensions of public service workers by 53% next year. If the increase goes through, the average public service worker's salary will be 600,000 tugs. An additional 700 billion tugriks will be needed in the state budget for salaries of state workers to increase by 53%. Currently, the minimum wage is 149,000 tugriks, and it was only 109,000 tugriks 2 years ago. In 2008, the Joint Coalition government promised to raise per capita GDP to $5,000 US. The government now projects that the per capita GDP will reach $5,362 next year. According to the draft budget, government revenue next year is projected to be 6.4 trillion Mongolian tugriks, which is 35.4% of GDP, while spending is expected to be 7.1 trillion, or 39.5% of GDP. The projected deficit is 4.1% of GDP. In the draft budget, the government says there will be 4 priorities for dealing with the economic boom in the mining industry. They are to maintain steady revenues, ensure that all citizens benefit equally, support economic development programs, and increase investment in healthcare and education. Officials of the Social Welfare and Labor Ministry said there's potential to raise salaries and pensions of state workers. The ministry has also decided to raise the salaries of the private sector workers. Last year, new jobs were created for 54,700 people by the government-implemented project of increasing employment. This year marks the 90th anniversary of the establishment of the first modern scientific institution in Mongolia. Mongolia's education system has undergone major changes in the recent past. The educational reforms during the communist times were a stark difference with traditional education that was often religious and esoteric. These reforms were modeled on Soviet education systems and greatly expanded access to education for Mongolian citizens. However, the move to democracy and free markets in the 1990s has had some negative impacts on education in Mongolia. Shortly after, the education system was widened for the public, and nowadays all communities have a chance to be educated. Over the past few years, the Mongolian Ministry of Education and Sciences has made many positive changes. The primary and secondary education system has expanded from 10 years to 12 years. Also this year, the Minister of Education, Culture, and Science announced a program that will introduce educational standards of Cambridge University to Mongolia. However, some researchers have criticized the system by saying there aren't enough skillful or confident staff members in the Mongolian educational sector. Thank you for joining us tonight. See you next week on English News. On behalf of the NTV News team, I'm Danny Wolf saying good evening.